The Cybernetic Foundry Phase 9. Sequential Sovereignty. The Object and the CLI Ceremony.
January 24th, 2026. Subject: Pirate First, MXDM. Role: Implementation Agent, ChatGPT. Introduction: The Strategic Deep Freeze. Phase 9 of the Cybernetic Foundry represents a shift from raw execution to constitutional freezing. The subject, Pirate First, approached this session with a critical question. Should development proceed concurrently across all layers, or should we harden the foundation first? The answer was a definitive pivot towards sequential sovereignty. This phase documents the birth of the sovereign pathway as a standalone, packaged artifact. It moves beyond the relay and the provisioner to address the most fundamental layer of the stack, existence. We have formalized the transformation of human-authored Markdown into immutable, content-addressed objects. This is the spine of the Foundry, a structure that remains true even if the network vanishes and the author disappears. Chapter 1. The Monolith Refusal, Defining the Three Primitives. The Foundry has officially rejected the monolith. To ensure future-proof resilience, the project is now defined by three distinct sovereign primitives. Sovereign_pathway.sovereignrelay.xyz, storage substrate durable, content addressable, and offline tolerant. It exists even in total network silence. Sovereignrelay.xyz, relay surface ephemeral, replaceable, and non-authoritative. It answers who is speaking now. Provisioner.quest, negotiation layer coordination, intent exchange, and capability choreography. It never stores facts, it only brokers agreements about them. This separation is described as correct, rare, and future-proof. By decoupling existence from negotiation, the Foundry ensures that an author's work does not rely on the health of the payment or transport layers to remain true. Chapter 2. Sequential Packaging: Why Storage Survives Network Silence. The strategic decision for Phase 9 is sequential packaging with concurrent design. We are building the sovereign pathway first because storage is the only component that must survive total network silence. While the provisioner and relay can be replaced or rewritten later, storage semantics are the hardest to change once users depend on them. If a storage error occurs, content may be lost or rendered unaddressable, an existential failure. Therefore, the foundation is being hardened into a shippable artifact before a single line of negotiation logic is implemented. Chapter 3. The Directory Tree, Mapping the Foundation. The sovereign pathway is no longer just a concept, it is a directory structure. This minimal, opinionated artifact is designed to be the ground truth for the rest of the stack. Sovereign pathway/readme.md spec/identity.md hashtag what ownership means here, addressing .md hashtag how content is named, hash, path, alias, availability.md hashtag offline/fallback rules trust, .md hashtag what is not promised reference/local store/ hashtag simple reference impl, file system, or LMDB. Examples/subs-to-ck-post.md site. 13. By explicitly including a what is not promised section, the Foundry maintains integrity against future feature creep or accidental recentralization. Chapter 4. Concurrent Design, Freezing Interfaces versus Implementations. To avoid building a rot-prone monolith, the Foundry utilizes interface freezing. We are designing the hooks for the provisioner and relay now without implementing them. The spec/provisioner-hooks.md answers what the provisioner will ask of storage: temporary access, write intent, and read leases. The spec/relay interaction.md defines what metadata can pass through and what is strictly forbidden. This non-coding phase prevents surprises later without the burden of premature construction. Chapter 5. The Ontological Choice: Why Storage Errors Are Irreversible. The Foundry recognizes that storage is ontological, while protocols are operational. Storage defines what exists. Protocols define how things talk. Storage errors are irreversible. Protocol errors are fixable. This realization is the engine behind Phase 9. By focusing on the spine, storage, first, We ensure that the content remains canonical regardless of how future relays or provisioners might fail or evolve. Chapter 6. The Temporal Stack, Horizons of Failure Tolerance. Phase 9 introduces the concept of a temporal stack, where each layer has a different survival horizon and failure tolerance. Layer time, horizon, failure tolerance. Sovereign pathway, years/decades, survives total network loss. Sovereign relay, minutes/hours, disposable/replaceable. Provisioner quest, seconds, pure negotiation. This maturity in architecture ensures that this sovereign object sits at the deepest level of the stack, immune to the volatility of the layers above it. Chapter 7. The .md Object Lifecycle, From Speech to Existence. The core achievement of Phase 9 is the formalization of the .md object lifecycle. It is a contract that the rest of the stack must obey. Markdown is human. Objects are sovereign. The lifecycle begins with a precondition of total isolation. A human-authored .md file, which is mere speech, is prepared for a transformation into existence. This process must be able to succeed even if the user disappears immediately after the moment of creation. Chapter 8. Canonicalization, the moment machines must agree. The second stage of the lifecycle is canonicalization. The human file is stripped of its ambiguity. Line endings are normalized, trailing whitespace is removed, and UTF-8 validity is ensured. Two humans may disagree. Two machines must not. This machine time process leads directly to the irreversible step, object derivation. A cryptographic hash, SHA-256, is computed, creating the object_ID. This is the moment of sovereignty. The object now exists, can be referenced forever, and cannot be altered. Chapter 9. Object Materialization, Function Emerging from Sovereignty. Once an object is derived, it undergoes materialization. A local directory is created to house the immutable body.md, a minimal meta.json, and an optional receipt.sig. Crucially, materialization is where utility emerges. The object can be bound into servable forms, HTTP-readable, relay addressable, or onion exposable, without ever changing the underlying canonical bytes. The object remains the ground truth, while the materialized artifacts are merely points of access. Chapter 10. The CLI Ceremony, Ingest, Materialize, and the Absent Publish. The lifecycle is now mapped to CLI primitives, verbs that do not mutate meaning, but only advance state. SPE ingest converts a human draft into an ingested sovereign object locally. SP materialize binds an object into a servable artifact, e.g., NIP, 23 payload, or static HTML. Notably, SP publish is intentionally absent from this phase. By freezing the ingest and materialize functions first, the Foundry prevents the accidental coupling of content to a specific network or relay. Chapter 11. Edge Implications, Presence as Authority Without Provisioning. Phase 9 clarifies the role of edge devices, old phones, mirrors. These devices only ever see ingested replicas or materialized artifacts. They cannot ingest or materialize. They can only host by presence. If the primary laptop dies, a phone holding the object becomes a default host, not through an election, but simply because it possesses the truth. This preserves the empowered not provisioned distinction that is central to the pirate-first philosophy. Chapter 12. The Sovereign Affidavit, the JSON Schema of Existence. The session concluded with the draft of the object.json schema, the sovereign object descriptor. This is not a dump of metadata. It is a cryptographic affidavit of existence. The schema is hostile to ambiguity. It requires a schema version, an object_ID URI, a content_hash, and an author. It embodies the design axiom that immutability is structural. If any field changes, the object ceases to exist and a new one is born. Critical reflection, the builder's exhaustion and the machine's spine. Critique of the subject. Pirate, first, the subject's fatigue is visible in the late-night timing of the session before midnight. Yet, this exhaustion produced the project's most disciplined work. The decision to slow the ship and freeze the foundations indicates a transition from a hacker mindset to an architectural one. Critique of the AI. ChatGPT, the AI successfully enforced the separation of concerns, resisting the urge to build cleverness and instead focusing on ballast specs. The move to one-step-at-a-time delivery is a necessary corrective to the high cognitive load sessions of the past. Conclusion: the system has already won. Sovereign objects do not need permission to exist, nor consensus to remain true. Phase 9 has successfully turned the sovereign pathway into doctrine. We have defined a system that remains true when platforms vanish and futures refuse to cooperate. The Forge is not just making tools. It is drafting a constitution for information integrity. Receipts, not rhetoric. End of Phase 9. Thanks for reading MXDM's newsletter. Subscribe for free to receive new posts and paypal.me/Martin Chartrand to support my work. Subscribe. Bolivar, the Bankster's Liberator. A forbidden history of Simon Bolivar and the invention of modern servitude. Hashtag pirate crash, hashtag Bolivar, hashtag forbidden history, hashtag dead is empire, hashtag financial colonialism.
The techno-nomads who arbitrated the fall of nations.
Substack note. The Cybernetic Foundry Phase 9, the spine is frozen. We have stopped building features to start building facts. Phase 9 marks the separation of the stack into 3 primitives: storage, pathway, transport, relay, and negotiation, provisioner. We are packaging the storage layer first because it is the only part that must survive a total network blackout. We've formalized the .md object lifecycle. Your words are no longer just files. They are content-addressed, immutable objects that can live on an old phone or a USB stick without needing a server to tell them they're real. The system has already won. Ex post. The Foundry Phase 9, Sequential Sovereignty Pirate Flag. We've rejected the monolith. Storage, existence. Relay, signal. Provisioner, negotiation. We are freezing the spine, storage, first. Content precedes the network. Facts precede the protocol. Hashtag sovereign pathway, hashtag Noster, hashtag build-in public, hashtag Cybernetic Foundry. Hashtags. Hashtag sovereign pathway, hashtag object lifecycle, hashtag immutable content, hashtag digital sovereignty, hashtag cybernetic foundry, hashtag build-in public, hashtag pirate first, hashtag information integrity, hashtag Noster protocol, hashtag spine first. Discussion about this.
The audio booklet, The Afterlife Protocol by Pirate First.
The circus survives on reaction. It feeds on outrage, applause, ridicule, belief. It does not care what you think, only that you respond.
Recent episodes. The Cybernetic Foundry, as it stands, loudspeaker-free podcast 14 minutes. 21 hours ago, MXDM, aka Vitsu. Pay join V2 and silent payments over provisioner.quest. Offshoot of sovereign_pathway, sovereign relay to XYZ. January 20th, MXDM, aka Vitsu. Lou Spectre de Marie Antoinette, Vertu. January 19th, MXDM, aka Vitsu.